Alright there folks, back again for another video. In this one we're going to be talking about what's going on with Age of Sigmar and the new edition coming up very soon, later this year. Games Workshop not too long ago, 2 weeks in fact, put out this sort of like teaser trailer, which was a little kind of look ahead as to what's coming for Warhammer Age of Sigmar and the new edition. The main thrust behind this was the idea that Sigmar had lied. The actual lie itself wasn't something that wasn't utterly unfamiliar with a lot of people. The whole idea is that the Stormcast, as they continue to be reforged over and over and over again, their souls sort of diminish effectively and they become less and less of themselves. Maybe they remember some of their past lives, or effectively part of their life is sort of taken away from them and they just become effectively soulless killers, really, battling their way through the mortal realms at the behest of Sigmar. The actual trailer itself, as you can see here, was actually pretty good. It showed off a female Stormcast Eternal, as you can see here, battling through all of the different editions and sort of fighting her way through different realms. So we had Gairan there, we had a little bit of Gur too, as she was battling against the forces of the Cruel Boys and things like that. But the latest sort of twist in this is that everything's going to be now moving towards the realm of Akshi once again, so the realm of fire, and we're going to be seeing Hammerhell actually sort of besieged almost by the forces of the Skaven, because their city, Blight City, as you can see there, has pushed its way up through the realms at the behest of the Chaos Gods, as the Horned Rat has now almost been elevated by Archaon, and they are now swarming forth, with the operative word, to take over the mortal realms and destroy everything in their wake effectively. The trailer kind of gave us a pretty good look at what kind of new miniatures we're going to be getting coming along. I think that was a very good sort of take on a new Skaven warlord or clan chief or something that we're going to be seeing in our games. Obviously then we had another mounted figure for the Stormcast Eternals coming into the mix. You've got rat ogres coming through. We know that they've done a lot of stuff twisting around new types of rat ogres and weapon teams and all that kind of stuff as well. This was obviously another chance for us to see things like the updated Stormcast Eternals, which we'll talk about later as well, I guess. Yeah, there's going to be a whole range of different things updated and changed for Warhammer Age of Sigmar as we move into the new edition. And it was a pretty good trailer to kind of get things started, I suppose. I think all the cinematic trailers that Games Workshop has been doing over the last little while have been really good, and they tend to really sort of get your juices flowing, I suppose, for a particular game. I think that was definitely the case with Warhammer 10th and 9th as well before that. And also I think what we saw for the Horus Heresy was a really big sort of driver towards people getting excited for it and sort of taking it in different directions and stuff. So yes, it's all been very, very cool seeing where things go when it comes to the trailer and sort of getting that idea of where we're going in the near future. As I said, one of the big things is this idea that the Stormcast that are being used by Sigmar to try and hold back the Skaven are from the Annihilation Chamber, and this is a chamber that has been designated as the sort of the broken Stormcast almost, who are very much on the brink, as it were, and they're going to be used to kind of force their way into the Skaven lairs and stuff and battle them on their various adventures. But yes, a few bits and pieces came out over on the blog for Warhammer Age of Sigmar from Warhammer Community, so if you're interested in getting a look at some of the news as to what they've been talking about for the new edition, you can find it all here. I'll make sure there's a link down below, but I'm just going to go through a little bit of it now as well. So collected together a few bits and pieces, so if you want a little bit of a primer, this is hopefully going to be helpful to you. One of the big things is that this is a, as they call it, index edition, or a reset effectively, where all of the old Battletomes and all of the rules from previous editions are going to be null and void. So if you're someone who has been playing Age of Sigmar throughout just 3rd edition effectively, all of the Battletomes that are out so far for the different armies are going to be void. So the rules in them will not be applicable, but those who dive in and take part will be able to get themselves free rules at the launch of the new edition or slightly thereafter. So if you are diving in to get your hands on a whole bunch of stuff Maybe don't buy any books. Actually, no, don't buy any books in the intervening couple of months before the new edition launches. Just wait and see what they come out with. If you're looking to build new armies and things like that, obviously do that if you're going to be diving in and playing them with your friends and things, but maybe wait if you're going to be looking towards sort of like a new project or something, and maybe keep an eye on what's coming out in the near future. They have also said that there's going to be another sort of new game mode that's coming out as well, which actually ties into the rules that they've been talking about. So one of the things they've done is they've kind of compartmentalized the rules, I suppose you'd say. It's nothing drastically different from what's been done previously in both 40k and in Age of Sigmar, but I like that it then applies to different styles of game effectively. So there's always going to be the core rules, and that's fantastic, but then split amongst that are also a bunch of different advanced rules. So commands are different, terrain, magic, army composition, command models, and battle tactics. And each of those then tie into different ways of playing the game. So if you're just playing the Spearhead mode, so Spearhead mode is the new combat patrol style game for Warhammer Age of Sigmar and the new edition. If you've not played combat patrol before from Warhammer 40,000 and 10th edition, the idea is that you pick up one of their getting started boxes, or in this case a Spearhead box, renamed from Vanguard. That will give you everything you need to play in that box for free in terms of the rules and things. Obviously you have to buy the models and the paints and things, but all the rules will be available online if you simply just dive in and start playing the game. You will only ever need to know the core rules for the game, as you can see demonstrated here, but there will also be specific Spearhead rules for your faction included as part of that box, or as a free download on their website over on Warcom or whatever, and that's all you'll need to know to play. If you're then diving into playing, let's say for example match play, as you can see here, then you'll then need to have the core rules plus all of the different sort of modules that you can see there sort of tied into the mix. So it would be effectively everything all the way through, battle tactics all the way through, right? And obviously that makes sense. If you're playing the full game, you would need all of the rules in order to do that. If you're playing Path to Glory, so you're playing the slightly more narratively focused version of Age of Sigmar, where you start off with a small force of maybe around 500 points and you build it up over time, you don't have to use, as you can see there, the battle tactics, but instead you'll have different objectives that you'll be focusing on as you go forward and play more games. The other way of playing this, obviously, is as you go through additional seasons, which isn't again tied into match play, you'll have the General's Handbook in addition to all of the other stuff that you come out with. So a General's Handbook is effectively like maybe a quarterly, maybe a half-year update for Warhammer Age of Sigmar, the game in general, which is tied to match play, and that will come with effectively bolt-on rules that you will then use to supplement some of these things. So you might, for example, get seasonal rules that are to do with magic. So that season's rules would effectively trump what was in the advanced rules from the main game. And it would be spells maybe based around, for the sake of argument, time or Skaven in more like chaotic nature of magic and things like that. Maybe that would replace what's available as part of the core rules. And the same would go for things like army composition or battle tactics. Maybe terrain would be different as well. Maybe, for example, if you're fighting in the realm of Gur, then your terrain rules for playing for that season would be different from what they'd be if they were playing with just the basic core rules in the game. So, yes, they've had to kind of like play around with a little bit and sort of play around with different styles of modular rules, which I think is a good idea. Whether or not it follows through into being interesting and easy to read will be a different matter, I think. Playing Warhammer 40,000 10th edition for the last while has been cool, and I've really enjoyed it, and it's been quite nice to get my head around the rules, but the actual rulebook itself for Warhammer 40,000 10th edition is kind of hard to get your head around in some cases. I think a lot of the language they've used and the layout has left something to be desired, I suppose. And so it'll be interesting to see if they've kind of worked out that as part of the design team for Age of Sigmar and what they do with the game moving into the new edition. In addition to that, we also had a bunch of updates in terms of the way that the game works and things like that. So there's just been a few things thrown in here and there that we'll go through as well. These will all be bookmarked as we're going through. So if there's a particular thing that you're quite interested in later on, like war scrolls and things, just go forward to that and have a look at that if you so desire. So one of the things they talked about is priority and how that works now. So the person who sets up their army first gets to choose the turn order, which makes sense. That's a nice little sort of carryover from what's happened effectively in other games and things. And it sort of puts an emphasis on you having a well-structured army effectively. And then the priority roll, as you can see there, you choose the turn order. And then as you go forward, if you roll doubles, then it's the person who didn't have it last time gets it this time and things. The thing that's different about the priority roll this time around, however, and it's something to be noted, is that if you choose to then in future turns take the double turn, which is a sort of famous mechanic in Age of Sigmar, where effectively you could go second in the first turn and then go first in the second, so effectively you continue to do more stuff before your opponent gets to react again, which allows you to have lots of variation in the way that the game runs, which is always nice, rather than it just being a basic sort of I go, you go, effectively all the way through. If you're interested in a little bit more about this, by the way, I'm going to put some links down below to the Honest Wargamers channel, because he's done some really good stuff about sort of explaining all of this and how it applies to both the last edition and then sort of this move into the new one, which will be in a lot more detail than what I'm doing here. But go and check that out because it's very, very good. But yes, if you choose to take that double turn, now in the game, you don't get to score your battle tactics that turn. So battle tactics are a way for you to score additional objectives throughout the game, as well as the core ones that you'll be doing, so maybe holding ground, for example. But you're effectively sacrificing the ability to score objective points to be more lethal. So you're going to get to do the fighting, do the more shooting, do more maneuvering, but at the expense of you being able to score objective points. So it'll be an interesting match and a balance to see how that works between sort of like competitive play and sort of how people see that sort of working for them when they get down to the tabletop. The other thing that is interesting about that is that, as you can see there, when you make the priority roll, the winner chooses the turn order. So if you choose the turn order and you choose to go second, obviously you don't get to score battle tactics because you've chosen to have the double turn, right? If you dive into that and you don't want to go first, you choose to go second, does that mean that you force your opponent to take a double turn and therefore not get battle tactics that turn, even though they didn't ask for that? It's an interesting thing that I think needs some clarification, which hopefully will come up in future videos and stuff like that from the team at Games Workshop. But we shall see. We shall see where they go with that one. Interestingly, the whole idea of sort of deploying first and stuff fits quite nicely into the way that armies are generated now. They've tried to kind of explore a slightly more thematic version of building armies, which I think is always nice to see. Effectively, things are now broken down into regiments. So a regiment begins with a hero, and then that hero can have a number of units as part of that regiment. So as you can see here, a regiment has a hero and then 0 to 3 non-hero units. And then if it's your general, they can have 0 to 4. There are then stipulations on who can be put into those particular regiments. So say, for example, you were playing... I think the example they used was the Lumineth Realm Lords, and you had one of their sort of Alarith style champions, so the ones with the big hammers and things like that, and stuff. So one of their big melee fighters. They could bring appropriate models, appropriate units that would fit that particular character. And I would assume that there'll then be potentially certain benefits perhaps to taking those, a little bit like in 40k, but obviously the hero isn't then attached to a unit, or at least as far as we know anyway. As part of the game. This means that maybe, for example, you were diving in and playing as Stormcast Eternals, and you were sitting down with one of their sort of dragon-based heroes. That would mean that you'd be able to take dragons as part of that regiment, and that would benefit you with some kind of bonuses or something like that. So it's effectively a way for them to kind of build up interesting themed armies and make you pick different things in order to access different stuff if you want to have those regiments looking appropriate. Now there is no reason why you can't have regiments. Why you have to have regiments. You can split things up and you can build things in different ways so that you can sort of access whatever's in your army however you like. But that's where the whole way the army composition comes together, and then that how then applies into both deployment, but also the way that your command points come together as well. So as you can see here, player 1 Has the General's Regiment, which would be a hero with 4 units in it. Then you've got another couple of regiments there with heroes, followed by their additional regiments. And then there's an auxiliary unit at the end. Now, auxiliary units are units that don't fit into regiments. So the more of those you have, the more drops you obviously have when it comes to deployment, which obviously then means that you're not going to necessarily get that first turn that you want potentially. But also, the person who has the least auxiliary units and has built the most regiments, so has built the most thematically sort of like compacted army effectively, gets themselves an additional command point per battle round. And considering command points are meant to be quite hard to come by in the new edition, that's going to lead in some interesting ways for people to build their armies. I like the idea. I'm always a fan of thematic armies and the way that sort of like is brought to life on the tabletop. I find it obviously it means that people aren't just going to be taking like a million of one thing. I'm sure there are people who will be like, well, I'm just going to have an entire army of Varan Knights or something like that, or of Blood Knights or something. That's fine, obviously, and that also really works into sort of the way that things, way that people want to build their armies and things like that, and you can still do that. It's just it won't benefit you when it comes to both your command points, taking that first round, etc., as well. So I think it's an interesting way for them to sort of play around with the way that army composition works, and hopefully we'll see some interesting stuff coming up as part of future War Scrolls and things, to explain maybe potential benefits for doing this and sort of following along with their kind of structure of how they want you to build your armies going forward into the new edition and stuff like that. Talking of War Scrolls, we also got a little bit of a look at what's been going on that front and where they've been tweaking things and changing things. So we'll have a look at the Liberators one here, which was the sort of initial one that they showed off. And I have thoughts. So the little round disc at the top hasn't necessarily changed too much. You still have your move distance in there in inches. You have your save, which is what you need on a d6 in order to keep yourself from taking damage. They've changed wounds to health, which I think is a good way of changing the descriptor. I still think it'll be called health wound, by the vast majority of people. But that demonstrates how much health each individual model in the unit has. And then there's a new stat which replaces bravery for the moment. We don't necessarily know how that works, but this is control, and this is for objective-based control of stuff on the tabletop. And that's tied to how much you're able to control an objective when you're next to it. It's a little bit like the way that OBSEC works in, not OBSEC, but objective control works in Warhammer 40,000, where certain models are better at holding objectives than others, which makes sense. Your hard, badass battle line troops that are, laden down with shields and everything like that, probably going to be better at holding an objective than a dude who's all about sort of floating around with his daggers, trying to stab everyone and assassinate things, etc., etc. Then they've sort of broken things down a little bit more into the way that your weapon profile is done. It's very similar to what we've seen in previous editions. Attacks is the number of attacks you have. Your hit is what you need to roll to hit. Wound is what you need to roll to wound. There's no comparison tables like you have in other games from Games Workshop. You've got your rend value as well in there, so that's the rend that you get against your opponent's armor save. So if that was hitting another Stormcast, for example, then that would change the save from 3+ to a 4+. And then you have the damage that each of those wounds does to you, to your health as it goes through to you. The difference there is that there's also then an ability tied into each of the weapons, which I think is a good way to put it there. In this case, the Liberators, the Stormcast Liberators, have crit, mortal, so when they roll a 6, then they will do mortal wounds to you, which I would imagine is very similar to the way that it works in Warhammer 40,000, which will be you just don't get to have your saves and things like that. You've then got a breakdown of the kind of weapons that a particular unit can have. So in this case, this shows you that the unit is 5 models big, although there should probably be something somewhere which explains that that's how big the unit is. One model in the unit can have a Grand Hammer. As you can see there, you've got the different stats for that. And the champion cannot be the one who replaces their weapon. There's also then a ability tied to each of the or tied to your war scrolls, which has been color coded, which we'll go to in a second as well. And this gives you an additional thing. So in this one, add 3 to this unit's control score. So as you can see at the top, it's normally control 1, but if it's next to an objective wholly within your friendly territory, that goes up to objective control 4 for each model, which makes Liberators very, very good at holding a particular spot on the battlefield in your deployment zone. The thing that I have thoughts about when it comes to the Liberators, however, is there's no distinction for the weapon choices that you make in the unit apart from what you see there for the Grand Hammer and the standard Warhammers. So Liberators, and you can see it in the background there, often came with the choice of either a shield and a hand weapon, effectively, in this case a Warhammer, or you could take dual weapons. So in most cases, with the old Liberators, that was having 2 swords, for the sake of argument. In this case, with the new Liberators, they've had them, so they have 2 hammers instead, which is very Thor-like, I suppose. But their stats and their equipment stats stay the same regardless of what you arm them with. So you could arm the entire unit with hand weapons and shields. You could equip the entire unit with twin hammers if you wanted to. They have exactly the same stats. So modelling for the shield to give them a 3+ doesn't exist anymore. Normally it was they had a 4+ save, but if they had a shield, it would give them a 3+ save. So there's no choices there when it comes to that. Now, obviously, in some ways that's good because it means you can't make a bad decision when it comes to making your models. Just make the models however you like. If you want to have your champion with 2 hammers, and then you want to have 3 guys with their shields, and then a guy with a grand hammer, that's totally fine. You can do that, and that will look grand. If you want to have them all with shields, you can do. If you want to have them all with double hammers, you can do. The only things you have to make a point of specifically modelling are the guy with the grand hammer and making sure that your champion doesn't have one of those things. So there are benefits and there are drawbacks, I guess. You can't make a wrong decision when you make the kit, but also it just feels a little weird to have the options there, but they don't actually give you any particular advantages or disadvantages. It's something that I suppose they're trying to do away with to make it so that it's less granular and easier for you to dive into, but it's just one of those things that I'm just like, okay, yeah, sure. I see what you're doing. I suppose we'll see how it works in practice, I suppose. We also got another war scroll. This one is for Nagash, the Supreme Lord of the Undead. Once again, has a whole bunch of additional bits and pieces in there, as you can see. There's the different weapon types, as you can see. Control of 10, health of 18. You still count up when it comes to damage in Warhammer Age of Sigmar. In 40k, you count down, so you mark the wounds that have been suffered by the unit. You mark the wounds that are left on a unit with a dice. In Warhammer Age of Sigmar, you count up. I don't understand why they do that differently, apart from just to be different, I suppose. But it just means that I'd continue. The thing that it's obviously there's nothing wrong with it. You can just say, "Oh, that unit has taken 10 wounds or whatever." But you have to keep asking your opponent, "How many wounds does he have left? How many wounds does he have left?" Whereas if it's the other way around, it's like, I can see how many wounds he has 5 left. Maybe it's to just be different, I suppose. But there we go. That's just my little nitpick with that anyway. You can see a couple of additional sort of abilities and stuff tied to the different characters, as you can see there. Lots of additional bits and pieces in this case. There's a passive ability which is just continual. You've got another passive ability, but then that's tied to a particular round. So in this case, it's a passive gold ability. So that means it happens in the hero phase. Oops. Again, 2 more gold abilities there. You can see it says your hero phase there as well, but then that ties. So you've got a quick, easy sort of reference to where that comes in. There's also symbols on it now, so it shows you what kind of ability it is. So in this case, this is I believe, a rally ability. Yeah, so that will help you sort of focus on exactly how that works in the game. You've also then got these special ones, which is the star. You've got this one here, I suppose, which is a offensive ability, just to give you an idea of how that works. And that happens at the end of any turn, so it happens in the end of turn phase, just to give you a helpful hit there as well, I suppose. And Nagash has still got his weird hand of dust thing where you hold up 2 hands, and the one that doesn't have the dice in it is the one where he dies and stuff, which is quite brutal. But yes, so that's a slightly more up-to-date sort of war scroll that they've been showing off for a character, but also the units there as well. As you can see there, they've also got the different turn phases that they've gone through here. It's very similar to what we've seen before. Start of turn, followed by the hero phase, movement phase, shooting phase, charge phase, combat phase, and the end of turn as well there. So simple stuff when it comes to what's coming together for Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and the way that they've been sort of like laying things out. I am enjoying the look at the new edition. I think for the most part it all feels like a step in the right direction. There are a few niggles here and there that I'm still trying to get my head around, like the stuff with the priority roll. If you make someone else take the double turn, what happens to them? I'd also like to see more information as to how characters and their regiments work, if there are particular benefits like you have in Warhammer 40,000, or if they've not gone that direction, I suppose. I'd really like there to be a case where characters retain the knowledge of leading a unit even when their unit is dead, because there's so much stuff in Warhammer 40,000 where it's like, my guy gives an additional bonus to this unit when he's leading it. When the unit's gone, he no longer remembers how to cut people's heads off. I mean, it's silly, isn't it, I suppose, but there we go. Maybe something they're going to change for 11th edition Warhammer 40,000. Who knows? They seem to learn off each other as they go between editions, which is an interesting thing. But yes, it's all coming together really nicely. I've really enjoyed Warhammer Age of Sigmar, playing 3rd edition for the last couple of months. Played a couple of games now. Watched loads more games online. Really enjoyed the way that it works. It feels a lot more reactive and interesting compared to 40k. I like the fact that range is less of a thing when it comes to Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and obviously you still have ranged weapons in there, and you still have magic and powerful abilities and things, but it's more about the cut and thrust of moving and combat and maneuvers and tactics and stuff, which is something that I think is cool, and a reason that I'm drawn to fantasy games more than I am to sci-fi, I suppose, in the round. But yes, that's just a little bit of sort of like an update as to where things stand when it comes to Warhammer Age of Sigmar at the moment and their rules updates. As I said, come over to the Warhammer Community Hub, as you can see here from Games Workshop, and it'll have all of the different NewAoS articles, as you can see here, whether you're able to go into a little bit more detail about what's happening throughout the realms. All very cool indeed. And yeah, go and watch that trailer again, so you might see some more fun stuff coming when it comes to the Skaven and things. Let me know what you think of the updates that they've shared so far in the comments down below. As I say, I'm really enjoying Warhammer Age of Sigmar and what they're doing with the game at the moment. Really enjoying the end of 3rd and the sort of whispers of what's happening in 4th. And I'm excited to play even more. I have Stormcast Eternals ready to paint and to strip. I also have some Cities of Sigmar waiting in the wings as well, and my Fire Slayers, which are sort of coming together as well. So yes, I'm very much a man of order, it seems, at the moment. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Is this a particular game that you're interested in? And hopefully I'll be able to show you a little bit more about what's happening with Age of Sigmar and the new edition over the next couple of weeks as they drop more and more details. So yes, I will be back hopefully in the near future with another video talking a little bit more about my thoughts for Warhammer Age of Sigmar and the new edition. See you in a little bit. Bye for now.